Running cities in D&D can be a miserable experience. If you've ever run a city in D&D, I'm willing to bet it went like this.
The innkeeper says it's called Gralhund Villa.
Yeah, we leave the inn and go there. It's all the way over there, like across the city.
Yeah, you walk across the city streets, you pass vendors and stalls, but eventually you get to the manor.
That didn't feel like a city. Why was it so hollow? Well, there's nothing annotated on the map, so the journey ends up being one of those cartoons where the characters walk in front of a cycling background. In this case, the background image is painted to look like a city, but it's flat. You can't play in it. It's just a vague space that we're told is totally a city. So the fix is obvious, right? We get a more annotated map.
Okay, we'll leave the Sea Tower of Balduran and then go to the 3 old kegs.
Yeah, sure thing. You go from the Sea Tower of Balduran into the Sea Tower neighborhood, past the Sea Gate, past a bunch of manor houses like Mandrakai's Manor and Hewn House, Bormal House, Watchful Shield, Eomain House, Raylan House, Ladies Hall, into the Temple's neighborhood where you pass Van Thamper Villa, the Helman Cloak, the High House of Wonders, the High Hall before arriving at the 3 old kegs. That's too many annotations. If you just bought a city module, you obviously want it to be stocked full of details that you can use to inspire your games. You want as much help from a city module as you can get. That's what you're paying for. Obviously, a fully detailed city is fantastic. You can run whole campaigns in them, like I have in my own Flintlock Fantasy Metropolis, Blackguard. But there is such a thing as too many details on the map. The maps I have for Blackguard are fairly empty.
Okay, so not enough annotations is bad. Too many annotations is bad. Can we stop whining and pick a middle ground?
No, because that's missing the point. The annotations are a problem, yeah, but they're not the problem, because solving this isn't about the volume of marked locations. It's about figuring out what job the map is supposed to serve. Because what you need are different maps for different jobs. But what are those jobs? And what would those maps look like? And how did I come to this conclusion?
Welcome to Mystic Arts, where all the NPCs are hot unless I specify otherwise. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for 11 years. I used to have no idea how to run D&D in a big city, or how to make it work at all. There are so many moving parts, and how do I make the city feel alive? Well, I add details. So how do I avoid going crazy with the amount of details I added? This used to rack my brain. And then I went on a few trips abroad, specifically to London and Edinburgh, and I started seeing the city I live in, Reykjavik, in a whole new light. Because it doesn't have to be this complicated. I think it's better if I give you a clear example. Let's go to downtown Reykjavik. And chances are, if you're familiar with Reykjavik at all, you are only familiar with downtown Reykjavik. You know, like Hallgrímskirkja, this big famous church, or the nearby shopping streets like Laugavir, the country's biggest shopping street and tourist trap. Or maybe you're more familiar with Alþingishúsið, our parliament building, or maybe the surrounding park where all our famous Icelandic public protests are held. Or maybe you know about Stjórnarráðið, which is the Prime Minister's office and the other sort of big famous government building. Or maybe the pond, the theater, or maybe Harpan, where musicians from around the world come to this country to perform for us little island bumpkins in what we think of as being a grand music hall, but they all probably think is a little more quaint. Or maybe Ingólfstorg, where hooligans come skate their skateboards and younger hooligans come bike their bikes, and on the weekend, drunk people come get some deep-fried meats. But here's the thing, all of those locations are within 700 meters of Lækjartorg, where I'm standing right now. Down that way is Alþingishúsið, down this way is Ingólfstorg, over there is Harpan, over there is Stjórnarráðið, and Hallgrímskirkja is just on the other side of those buildings. Really, all these locations are a stone's throw away from one another, and the same is true of other major cities. When you're thinking about all the touristy stuff in London, Big Ben, the Eye, Whitehall, Buckingham Palace, it's almost all just Westminster, and maybe a few things in the City of London, like the Tower or Tower Bridge. Or when you think of Edinburgh, you're thinking of Edinburgh Castle, the Scott Monument, St. Giles, the Royal Mile, and Holyrood. It's all really close by. City centers are where the big activity hubs are, so it's natural for these locations to be more heavily marked up as annotated on your maps. When you're running a city, you can make specific areas more detailed than others. Not every part of the city needs to be equally detailed. It's just not useful. It's really not. You need to design a menu where these things are all helping you out. Check out this map.
This is the city map that came out in the 1994 box set Forgotten Realms City of Splendors. And look, it's super detailed. Very different from the basically empty 5e map. It's 2 poster maps that you kind of gotta line up to take a proper look at this super detailed city. It's so cool. And these little yellow spots are annotated spots that you can look up in the booklet, but you don't have to. But there's something really fascinating about this box set. The Adventurer's Quarter. Here, let me show you. This tiny part of the city is way more detailed because the box set wants you to make this be the player's home base. It comes with 2 poster maps, each of which is just like a picture of some guy's miniature terrain, and on that map, every house is marked. So you can look it up in the Gazetteer. It's way more detailed, but that's because the box set expects you to set adventures on this one city block.
And the 5e adventure Waterdeep Dragon Heist kind of does the same thing. Waterdeep is broadly detailed here, but when the characters get to Troll Skull Alley, the adventure details it much further. Because of course it does, you need to zoom into areas that see more play, because those areas will be played in. In the adventure, the players get to own a house in Troll Skull Alley, so they detail the alley because they want you to get to know your neighbors. But my point being is there's no use in doing that detail everywhere. You just do it in the areas that are going to be in the spotlight. Let me illustrate this with an imaginary scenario. Come with me.
Let's say I'm a resident of Reykjavik, which I am, and I would like to meet a friend out for some coffee. I mean, gross, I don't drink coffee, but bear with me. Well, automatically I know that I can go downtown and pick any coffee shop at random. I mean, there's like 50 of them somewhere up and down Reykjavik alone, this shopping street. And any of them would be cozy, warm, and frankly, overpriced. They're all kind of the same. But the thing is, I don't live downtown.
I live in a suburb, which is a different story. Suburbs are
Boring as hell. I mean, there are no coffee shops here, which no skin off my back, I don't drink coffee. But if I wanted to meet a friend over coffee, I'd have a choice of 2 locations. Either at this industrial commercial neighborhood, which gross, or I can go to the local strip mall, which is telling, isn't it? If I were to make an annotated map of this entire area, this entire suburb, I'd only ever key out
2 locations, the industrial commercial area and the strip mall. The rest just isn't important. I mean, if you're doing a murder
mystery or something like that, then you can obviously go detail out a suburb or a street and put in little markers about where all the witnesses are and who saw what. But that's adventure prep. That is not something you need in the big campaign map overview of the entire city.
If you're new to the hobby, campaigns in megacities have been with us since the very start. TSR published the original game in 1974 and their first setting, Greyhawk, in 75. But in 1976, Judges Guild, maybe the first ever third-party publisher, made a supplement. Oh, but back then they were called play aids. They required official approval from TSR since there was no OGL or Creative Commons. Well, these 2 guys, Bob Bledsaw and Bill Owen, brought a bunch of maps to Gen Con in 76. But since they didn't have a vendor's booth, they just sort of talked to nerds. And when they caught a customer, they brought them out to the parking lot and sold them illicit maps from the back of their car. Like drug dealers, but with nerd contraband, the first RPG supplement to feature a fully developed city environment. They called it the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. And they signed people up for a subscription service where people could get packets delivered to their home. Each packet detailed elements of this city they were making. By the end, all of those packets were compiled into a single product. That's not a bad idea. I'm doing that with my City of Blackguard on Patreon, a bunch of issues of a digital magazine that, when released, will create a city full of details. It's called a broadsheet and it's available to Adept tier supporters, or each issue sold separately for the price of an Adept subscription. Every issue has an adventure, a detailed burrow, and a 3rd chapter with something like lore or setting guidance, or in issue number 3, out now, we've got new subclasses. The Mage Hunter Fighter, the Collegiate Wizard, the Archaeologist Ranger, and the Sorcerer that can disintegrate people like they're Dr. Manhattan. Since then, we've gotten dozens of city supplements from TSR and WotC and others. You've got countless options like Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, Greyhawk, the City of Drakenheim, Emon, Capital. There's a lot of options, but every day new DMs are overwhelmed by the idea of running a big city. They're terrified of how they're supposed to keep the whole thing in their head. How do they cope with the complexity? Well, you tackle it like you tackle anything big. You break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks, like eating an elephant. Because when you're in a city, you don't feel like you're in a city. you feel like you're in a specific location.
The point I'm getting at is this. Reykjavik is a city. I mean, it might not be one according to what your standards of what a city is, but Iceland has about 380,000 people living in it, and about half of them live in this city. So it's a city according to our standards. And here's the thing, if you were to make an RPG map of Reykjavik, you wouldn't put an equal amount of details in the suburbs as you would in the tiny square mileage of downtown where everything I've shown you so far is.
You're not committing a crime if you haven't detailed every part of a city equally.
Ergonomically, putting in as much detail as you need in each location is just good design. I mean, here in the middle of downtown Reykjavik, next to this famous lake, there is a row of residential houses. On a map, these would just be empty, unmarked spots. Okay, this one's a theater, but the rest are all just regular houses. The DM of Earth didn't need to put in any extra detail here. When I started making my own megacity, I thought a lot about this, and I decided to make different layers of maps. Now, I could have just gone for different amounts of detail on the one map. Big map, bunch of notes in the middle, and then fewer and fewer out as you get further away from the center. But I wanted different layers of maps. 3 specifically. A city map, a borough map, and a hub map.
The city map looks like this. It encompasses the whole city with few very important or very notable locations keyed in. It used to look like this, which had a bigger key, but even here you'll notice I key more in the inner city than I do in the outer city. But then each borough in the inner city is getting a borough map, like this one for the Argent sector, or this one for the interchange. Here, it's much more detailed. Loads of keyed locations. For my own sake, I wrote the names of the locations on the map instead of keying with numbers. That way you don't have to flip back and forth as much, and you can just read the map and then find that header alphabetically in the source book. And then I did this.
Mont Circle is on the map here, but it's a hub. When you go to M for Mont, it takes you to a page full of more locations because Mont, like the area in downtown Reykjavik that I just showed you, is so dense that it's best to break it down further. In the case of Mont Circle, it's just a bunch of bars, but here it's fully detailed. 3 layers of details: city, borough, hub.
This is all a part of the broadsheet, which is available on the Patreon.
Which really only leaves figuring out how to do places like this one, shopping streets that are kind of like hubs. They've got street food and they've got empty stores, but they've also got fish and chips and barber shops, all of them nestled right next to each other in a hub. And then I realized they're all the same.
And the same is true, by the way, of every downtown across the world.
I remember when I was in Edinburgh and I saw so many different shops with different exteriors, owners, advertising, marketing, and everything, but they all sold the exact same version of this scarf and this hat. Their stock was identical.
Same here. In Iceland, you can buy fat puffins everywhere. It's a stock item.
So I thought, what is my city's equivalent of these standard features you find all over Edinburgh or London or whatever, pubs and hotels? And I decided to make a procedural tool. So that way, whenever your players go running into the nearest corner store, you just roll a die and generate an establishment on the fly. And wham, you've immediately generated a part of the city that feels like it's a part of the whole thing. I mean, that pub you generate might not be entirely different from the pub you generated last time, but that's not entirely unrealistic.
I made a table just like that for Black Art and stuck it into the newest issue of the zine, just after the 4 new subclasses. So what's my point? Just detail the stuff that matters. You don't need to spend ages reading or writing all the details for every part of the city. You put in the work where you can, so it ends up on screen. Like with this video. I didn't film a bunch of segments that I then cut. I only filmed what I put in the video. And when you do a huge city, just work on the parts that can't be seen. Iman from Critical Role is in their campaign setting books, and it's not that detailed. It's a few marked locations, and that's it. Same with Rexentrum. They are not that detailed. MCDM's capital streams were all set in a city that the DM had barely detailed at all, except for the neighborhoods the players are playing in. Or if you're running a city you've bought and read, just familiarize yourself with the shape and the key structures and introduce them to the PCs. Harp on them over and over again. Render them with detail in subsequent render passes. Leave the rest for other campaigns when those things might not end up mattering. No use getting stuck in them for now. Every visit my players make to Waterdeep doesn't make use of all these annotated points. They go to the yawning portal and I describe a walking statue in a funny pose that they haven't seen before. Those 2 things make them immediately go, oh yeah, we're in Waterdeep. If it was a new thing every time, they'd get lost in it. You can see this on Game of Thrones with King's Landing. It's the Red Keep, the Sept of Baelor, and the Flea Market. And then occasionally we visit something else like Littlefinger's brothel, the docks, the gates, or whatever. But it's mostly the Red Keep, the Sept of Baelor, and the Flea Market. That's the city. Find those big things for your city, harp on them, and focus on the city center, and safely ignore the suburbs until they matter in the story. Build out your city in render passes at the table with your friends. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend.
Fat Puffin.
Fat Puffin. And if you want to support us directly, consider joining our Patreon and picking up the broadsheet to see how I built my megacity. And if you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.